Hello, and welcome to another episode of The End of the Search. This one I call it clairvoyance, or how do you pronounce that word? I don't know. I still cannot get it. Clairvoyance, it's written in the screen. Okay, mental reading and all that kind of stuff. It's based on a question somebody asked me, and the question is, Nick, I have a question about mental connection with other people and whether they can actually see into my mind somehow. These people are very rare, but when I meet one, I get the feeling that they know what I'm thinking, even from a distance. And I perceive things too. I know when they are feeling bad in some way and other sensations. I feel like I am being recognized from within, and I don't understand anything. It even makes me a little anxious. I also get the impression that they have an advantage over me because of this. Is this feeling also another projection, or is there some truth to it? Thanks, Nick. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what I responded in writing, and then we'll elaborate a bit. I said, no one can see your mind, nor can you see anyone else's, because the belief in being a separate being, an individual, is the limitation that stands in the way of wholeness, and you are wholeness. That is to say, when you're sleeping, there's only one mind, period, which in this case will be your mind, the mind of the one sleeping in bed. The moment you begin to dream, all the characters in the dream come from that same mind. And sometimes in the dream, one character might say to another one, I know what you're thinking. Or the other may say, I'm feeling something about you. But the reality is that all of that arises from the mind that projects each and every one of the characters. Therefore, you as consciousness, in moments when you are not identified with your personality, with your identity, can have access to sensations as well as premonitions about apparent other, but the moment all attention returns to you as an individual, that door automatically closes. In any case, what an apparent other believes it can know about you is what you know about yourself, only projected onto another. The important thing is not to dwell on any of it, because your mind will continue to generate all sorts of questions and possibilities, and all you're seeing is how you're reacting to all those questions that arise in your mind, which interestingly, if you stop paying attention to them, will collapse under their own weight. Meanwhile, you remain as you are. And then the person says, but then you are also a character projected by the mind? That's hard to understand. Yes, I understand it's confusing, but well, sometimes I give it importance. Thanks, Nick. And then I just finish with, you, me, like everything perceptible, are projections of that same mind. And everything we're doing is remembering that we are the mind, not the individual. You can choose the word consciousness instead of mind. It's projected by the same consciousness, and all remembering here is that we are consciousness. This is not something you'll be able to understand conceptually. That is why I repeat that if you go to the mind, which is the one that fabricates stories, you'll end up spending the rest of eternity trying to understand, decipher, and make sense of all this. It's much simpler. Don't believe the content of the mind, and what is obvious, which is your very experience of being, becomes evident. That's how you experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. In other words, the only reason why you cannot read my thoughts and I cannot read yours is because you believe that you're you and I believe that I'm me. And as long as there's a belief in this sense of identity, then it seems as though I have my private thoughts and you have your private thoughts. But all thoughts comes from consciousness, from all that there is. So technically speaking, your thoughts are my thoughts and my thoughts are your thoughts, because we're all the same thing. But as long as it's a belief that there's a you as a person, it seems as though you have your private thoughts and I seem to have my private ones. There's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, the body is the fence the Son of God imagines he has built to separate parts of his self from other parts. In other words, when you're in bed and you're sleeping, that would be, just for the sake of this example, that one mind would be the Son of God. But the moment that that mind projects a dream, then projects different bodies, and that is how that mind believes that is separate from itself by fragmenting itself into different parts, which will be the different bodies. So you and I are the very same thing, the very, all that there is, create whatever. But as long as the projection seems to arise, now there's a belief that you are you and me is me, but that comes from the very same source that is projecting all of this. And all the thoughts and everything comes from the very same source. So technically speaking, I have access to those thoughts that you seem to be having, and you also have access to the one that I'm supposed to be having, because in the end, they all come from the very same source. But as long as the source believes that there's a you and there's a me, it seems as if though only certain ones seems to have access to certain thought. Now, you talk about premonitions or feelings that you might have. Yeah, of course. You and I are the same. You and I are not separate. We are sharing the very same consciousness. So in times when I'm completely out of the way, so to speak, I may have a feeling, a sensation. Where did it come from? I don't know, but it may seem that it has something to do with you. And I say, look, I had a premonition. But in reality, all it happens is that in the seeming linear order of things, all of a sudden the time-space disappear, and it seemed as if though you had access as a projection that suppose it's going to be happening later, and you happen to know about it right now for some reason. But it's irrelevant, because remember, when you're sleeping and you're dreaming, the dream seems like you have lived a long time. It seems that you have traveled all over different places, and all of that may have happened in probably 5 seconds. See, so the time thing is a figment of the imagination. If you want to know more about time, just watch the video. I have the link on the description about the concept of time, so you can see how illusory it is. And there's another quote from A Course in Miracles, and by the way, these videos are not about A Course in Miracles. It just so happens that sometimes, I quote from the Buddha, the Bible, the whatever, as long as it supports the whatever it is that I am sharing. And in this case, another quote from the Course in Miracles says, "Miracles occur naturally as expressions of love. The real miracle is the love that inspires them. In this sense, everything that comes from love is a miracle." So in a way, it's not about me trying to make miracles happen or something at will, because again, that'll be coming from the place of separation, fear, the identity of a separate self. But when I get out of the way, when I just being, right? If I am resting in that peace that I am, which is, you can call it love, then every action, everything that comes from that, which is inspired from that, is considered a miracle. Sometimes the miracle may come in a form of an idea that may help in a particular situation, or seems to be a situation happening, and before you even know it, something happens. Most people call it luck, others call it coincidence, others call them synchronicities, but that could be an expression of the peace in which you are resting, you see? That is pretty much getting yourself out of the way. But in the end, like I said, like I was sharing over here, there's no need to be concerned about any of that. Nobody can read my mind, and I cannot read yours at will. That's just not the way it is. But if there's something about you that flash into my mind, it's not because I chose it. It's because for some reason in that particular moment in time, I seem to have access to the universality of thoughts that supposedly it was supposed to belong to you, but then it happens to land on you, and I just happen to see it as well. But then the moment I go back to the identification with this seeming character, boom, that door is shut again. You keep your private thoughts, and I seem to be keeping my private thoughts. But in the end, there's no such thing as private thoughts, because we are all the same consciousness. We are all the same beingness. So in the end, we're all the same. But the most practical thing here within these videos is if you don't identify with the content of the mind, if you don't believe the content of the mind, then you're resting in the beingness that you are. And if you happen to be a Course in Miracles student, or whatever, if that happens to be the case, well, when I suggest don't believe the content of the mind, in other words, just whatever it is, just simply being, don't believe it, would be the equivalent when the Course in Miracles says surrender your thought system to the Holy Spirit or to Jesus, whatever you want to use, the concept you want to use. According to the Course, would be Jesus or Holy Spirit. If you are not, you don't practice a Course or don't know anything about it, that's fine. In that case, will be to universal consciousness, to love. It doesn't really matter. But when I know that I don't know, is when I really open to the fact that I am, and we're resting in the fact that I am. Always remembering that these videos are paradoxical. That's why I suggest you watch the video, Do We Have Free Will? Again, the link is on the description below, because in the end, you're not going to do anything because I suggest you. You do whatever you're supposed to do according to how life is unfolding through you. And I always say, if life led you to this kind of information, why cannot we say that now you're being led to assume that you have the choice of not believing the content of the mind. So having said that, and living within that paradox, if you don't believe the content of the mind, if you don't believe the thoughts, let them be there, they will be there. But if you don't believe them, what remains is what is. And that which is what could be referred to as love, essence, beingness, whatever you want to call it. Rather not call it anything, it simply is. And this is the inspiration that came through. I hope it served. And as always, may peace permeate the mind so that love can be extended.